10 seconds. Jared. Jared.
You know what? Let him be. He's having a moment. I got this. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Happy Hour Game Dev. It's October 6th, 2017, and we are excited to make yet another creature. Now, we've done the Game Dev theme before. We've created a production schedule, an alien dog, an unfortunately positioned space spider, but I'll be the first to say that I am thrilled that we will be making Disco Lando's favorite creature of all, the space whale. I'm Tyler Whitkin, lead community manager in the Austin, Texas studio, and joining me this episode, Tyler Nolan, community manager in the LA office.
Hey there.
I don't know which way you are.
I'm right in front of you.
Yes. Our esteemed guest, character art director Josh Herman. Josh, how are you?
Doing very good. How you guys doing?
Always good. And of course, none other than the one and the only, Disco Lando. Disco, how are you doing, buddy?
Okay.
No, hey everybody, welcome to Happy Hour Game Dev. Thank you, Tyler. Good job on the intro. If you haven't already heard, yes, the powers that be have come down from wherever they Mount Olympus and commanded us to finally yield to the vote winner for the last three Happy Hour Game Dev You Create a Creature vote tallies. The space whale. So yes, we are going to be creating a space whale today. Now I want to preface this right off the bat. As with every Happy Hour Game Dev, this is absolutely no guarantee. This is making the game. There's no guarantee space whales are going into the game. And if space whales do go into the game, there's no guarantee that this particular concept will make it. That said, we do have the character art director, Josh Herman, here with us. So the chances are maybe a little higher than normal. To also lend credence to this particular endeavor and to inform you as to why this endeavor might be a little different than normal, JJ, if you can bring up the design document, the fine members from the lore and science team have actually given us a space whale design brief. So they have thought this out. Dave Haddock and Will Weisbaum and Adam Weiser and Sherry Heiberg, they have gone through and thought out the design of a space whale. So we are going to be following this design as much as Josh wants to. I mean, he's the boss here. So we probably won't have as many votes as we normally do because we do have a specific design that has been given to us to create. So with that, Josh, how do we start this thing?
Yeah, so let's just get started.
Let's take away the brief here.
I am just going to start basically blocking out the shapes of just a general kind of whale shape, right? So, whales, fish, all that kind of stuff is going to be, cylindrical. So I'm just going to start blocking out some of these little things, key features to making, I think we kind of run into some interesting things when it talks about, whales, right? Mm-hmm. The thing with the whale is it's a mammal that swims in the sea, so you have to have very specific things. Now, does that mean that ours needs to be a mammal? Does that mean, what things are we actually wanting to stick to on that? We don't have to stick to everything, so.
Yes. Looking at the design document, it is clearly stated that it is a creature so hardy that it can survive in the vacuum of space, but it does seem to operate within the confines of gas giants. Mm-hmm. It's not to say that they can't leave the gas giant occasionally, but that is primarily its environment, or at least the environment in which they spawn.
Yeah.
So definitely be a swimming creature.
I'm so happy this is happening right now.
I
just can't stop smiling. I'm proud of our community.
Yeah. Jay, let's go ahead and bring this up real quick. Sherry also provided us with an anatomy of a whale, a little diagram here. So the two blowholes. Do all whales have two blowholes? I don't think I knew that.
I did not know
Maybe
that.
just this one. Dorsal fins, dorsal ridges. She thankfully pointed out the anus. Thank you, Sherry Heiberg.
That's an important anatomical.
Hey, everybody poops. Right? And as folks have already glimpsed from the beginning, yes, the Tardigrade. She has specified, or the team has specified, that it's not just a whale in space. It is, because we always do a hybrid here, the hybrid option for this is intended to be a tardigrade. And if you've never seen a tardigrade before, we have
I have not.
We have an image for you
Oh,
there.
man.
I bet you have.
That is a tardigrade. And if you guys want hours of endless fun at the end of the show, definitely Google tardigrades.
Yeah.
We've got one in action here. Hold on. Look at this guy.
What is it?
Look at that guy.
Tardigrades are I think they're the only known species that can survive the vacuum of space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they can live, I don't actually know how long they live. Do you know how long they live?
Nope. I'll ask one next time I see
I feel like they go into like a hibernation state or something like that, and like they don't need water or anything for like a really long time. They're also really small, fortunately. But yeah, they're like one of the only things that can actually survive space, and like I think it can survive like volcanic temperatures too. And
yeah.
I'm just going to say that thing is creepy.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
But they are built rugged tough.
yeah.
So,
Like a
They
terrapin?
are,
all right.
yeah, they are designed
Let's
for
go ahead and
that.
kill the doc, JJ. All right.
I think they're also called something bears, like water bears.
Water bears.
Water bears.
Yeah.
I can see that. I can see that.
And they kind of swim around and they're like super creepy. But yeah, so we're just going to basically start blocking out some of these shapes. Obviously, we have our generic whale shape. I think when I'm looking at like what we're working on, get out of here button. I think people, they always call it space whales, and that's important because that's the iconic thing of a space whale is generally, or a whale is this, I think, general shape, kind of this shape with flippers and fins.
Yes.
So this is kind of where we'll start, is we'll get this kind of general shape, and then we'll kind of start branching off from here and kind of seeing what exactly it is. I think one of the interesting things, I was reading some of the comments on our thread, and we've thought about this kind of stuff before too. So, what is it that makes it possible for a whale that's going to live either in like super far out atmosphere or even in the depths of space? Like, what is it exactly that's going to make that be able to survive? And I think one of the things you have to figure out, or one of the things you think about, is how it eats, or does it eat, or how does it kind of sustain or do that?
Gain energy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the easiest thing to start thinking about is what's out there that it could eat. So if you're looking at things in space, you have like lots of little particles. You have asteroids. You have moisture that's in clouds or whatever that kind of stuff is. And so you can start looking into all those and choosing what it is that it would eat, and then also going back and referencing natural life here on Earth always. Just to kind of get ideas. So, even if we just look at the range of different types of whales that we have on Earth, we have, some that are going to be like a killer whale, and that's going to be, eating seals and other things like that. But we don't really have that opportunity, I don't think, unless we start to create this whole ecosystem that's going to live out in that area.
Right.
So that's probably going to be off the table, which means we're not really going to need this thing to have... it's not going to need to have teeth in that way, because it's not going to need to chew anything. So I think what we would probably start thinking about is something more along the lines of like a baleen whale, or something that's going to filter in lots of little plankton, and it's going to eat a lot of little tiny things to sustain its size.
Which also lends itself to the tardigrade idea, because tardigrades feed on like moss and lichen and stuff like that. So very, very small strainers as opposed to to teeth.
Yeah.
Now, Josh, have you done a sea creature or a whale before?
I've done some sea creatures before. I've sculpted actually for some movies and stuff like that. I had to sculpt fish. We made for some props. But I've sculpted a couple other sea creatures before, but kind of just generally starting off with the main big 3-4 features of the whale. So we've kind of got some fins here. I think these are pectoral fins. Is this what this is called? Yeah, pectoral fin. I have that anatomy of a whale printed out. That's very helpful. We have the dorsal fin. We have I think this is a fluke. Is that what these are called?
Let me look at the anatomy thing.
I think this says it's a fluke.
Which part?
The tail fins.
We have fluke.
And then obviously it's just the general shape of the body. So we'll start with this and we'll start kind of branching off. Another thing that I want to do just in general just to maybe counteract some of our previous streams is I want to load up our guy now.
Uh-oh.
Now I'm just going to get this out of the way.
Oh, God.
You know, I'm going to choose...
hold on, before you... I'm just going to dive under the table before
you know what?
do it.
I can actually do something a little different here. Maybe we just choose the same guy we've always chosen. I just want to get this out of the way because you know what? We do it all the time, every single time. And we're just, you know, why not?
Clothes on.
And
I can already see the email from Carl.
not too bad, actually.
Whoa.
That's
Pretty
not bad.
good.
That's not bad. All
So
right.
we'll,
We can. This one's rated
Oh,
PG.
wow.
This is good.
Oh, gosh.
It looks like a kayak.
What are you...
I'm just scaling down right now. Don't worry about it.
You know,
This is
Chad's
going really well.
disappointed. No, we can't. It's been done. We can't do it again. Jared's out
Alright,
freshening
cool.
up his resume.
So I'm thinking at a minimum, this is probably the height that it needs to be. Like at the size. Right? For some reason, it's doing this thing.
It's a big whale.
Yeah, it's pretty big, right? I think it could go a little oh, I've inverted it. Something's happened. Something terrible has just happened.
Chad is spamming that the whale needs to be bigger. Too small, too
I
small.
I don't disagree at all. Let me just fix this bug real quick, and I'm going to save this. This is the fun that you guys get to see. Whale 1, awesome. For some reason, everything is turned inside out. As you can see, I'll just give you guys a quick fun glimpse into Gamedev, where this is what happens when a character's normals are flipped.
Is that called inverted normals?
It is, and for some reason, that has happened on the entire scene. So,
I saw that with Mark Strong's character once, and it was
it's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
It was terrifying.
So we'll just try to see if we can fix this. It's on each one. Double. Just popping through all these. This is basically a setting that shows, do I want to see the inside or the outside of something?
Gotcha.
Why would that ever be a setting?
Well, you know. Sometimes you have...
If someone asks you if you want to see the inside or
All right,
outside
let's
of
get this
someone,
thing.
you say outside.
Cool.
Oh, we're not off to a great start.
So let's go even a little tinier. I think maybe that's a good start. Cool. And now we can hide that guy. And just because I'm curious about this bug, I'm going to save again just to be safe.
Always better safe than sorry.
That's right. And my brush is super tiny because I think something's happened here. Fun stuff.
Yeah, guys, if you have any questions at all, Josh Herman, character art director, feel free to throw them up. We are reading Twitch chat.
I'm just going to restart ZBrush real quick.
Okay.
That
Sounds
shouldn't
good, sounds
affect
good.
anything too badly.
Now, while you do that, I have a question for you, Josh, if that's cool.
Yeah, please.
It seems like when you do character art that you do creatures. I mean, we've done a dog, a spider, and now a whale. How do you go about understanding the anatomy for so many different creatures? Or is there like a pre-production phase for every different creature where you have to study that type?
There's not really a pre-production phase where you're starting with, you know, you're not really researching each individual one. I think at that point it's kind of up to the individual artist who's going to work on it. As far as what they're actually going to work on, you know, if it's a whale or a dog or whatever, that kind of thing. All right, this is fixed now. Cool.
Nice.
I think. Yeah, we should be fine. So I'm going to switch my brush up here to the snake hook brush. This is one of my favorite brushes to just kind of start pulling things. Meaning I can just pull some of these little fins, or if we want little different kinds of shapes and stuff like that. It's also really good for just generally shaping things. So I can start, you know, tapering this up a little bit. I don't want it to feel like it's too tube-like. I want to start getting some more shapes into that, and just kind of start going from there. But yeah, there's not, I think a lot of it is just, there's some crossover between different types of animals, right? A lot of animals have very similar skeletal structures, so when you're, working on one, you start to kind of go through them all and get a little bit of the hang of others. Like a lot of quadrupeds will have very similar muscle structures. Bipeds have very similar muscle structures. Fish and a lot of different things that don't have feet are going to have very similar things as well. So it's just kind of at that point playing with what you know and adjusting from there. But yeah.
Somebody asked a question. Bitartex says, "How many creatures have you created in the past, Josh?" I imagine it's a lot.
More than
but
7?
I think. What did you say?
More than 7?
Yeah, more than 7. Yeah.
That's a lot.
But that actually brings up a good point. Some people may have missed our last episodes of Happy Hour Game Dev. Do you think you could give people a little bit of background on you?
Sure. Yeah. So before I started working at CIG, I worked at a practical effects house called Legacy Effects. Legacy Effects is old Stan Winston Studios, which basically means that they were the company that was doing all the practical effects for movies like Jurassic Park, Alien, Predator, Edward Scissorhands, Interview with the Vampire, and tons and tons and tons and tons of other things. When Stan Winston passed away, they created a new shop in his honor named Legacy Effects, and it just kind of was a practical effects house. They were probably the first one to really getting into doing like digital sculpting. So they started working on movies like Zathura with Jon Favreau, and then they followed up with Iron Man with Jon Favreau, where you can make a digital model that is much more accurate than a traditional model in clay. I'm just going to start blocking out some shapes. I'm not really specific on any of the exact shapes right now. I'm just kind of exploring where the breakup for the head itself could be, and we'll be able to kind of...
Because I feel like a tardigrade has a very specific kind of face.
Yeah, but I don't know if we want like a tardigrade. Here's what it would look like if it's just like a straight up tardigrade face. Is we'll kind of get this, right? And it'll kind of be really awkward and kind of weird, because that's basically what they are. It's like a giant pillow with like a front little suction cup mouth thing that comes out, a little alien xenomorph mouth. I don't think these things need eyes, so I'm just gonna kind of try to omit having that, because there's not really a reason. And even one of the things you can do to sell scale on an animal or a creature or anything is eye size. The smaller the eye, typically the bigger the creature is going to look. So even if we were going to put an eye in this thing, it's probably going to be like the size of this little pixel here. So you're not really going to see it, and there's maybe not really a reason to include it.
So because you're designing it without eyes, we also have to think of how else it communicates or gets around, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's absolutely true. So, is it going to be something where it's just, maybe we'll put some more fins or something on the bottom here. Is it sonar? I mean, I think that's probably one of the most common things. Like even, whales on Earth use sonar, or they communicate through sound. So,
Question from Woolly Pop or Woolly Wop: does it poop? I'm looking at the design document. It does poop.
Yeah, I would imagine it probably does. Yeah.
They did not include what it poops or what the makeup of its poop. So,
Right.
sorry.
The important questions. Could work.
We do have, going through this design document here, we do have apparently Sherry got a talented artist, according to the description here, to do her rough sketch of what the space whale might look like. It does say conception attempt by a talented artist. I'm not going to comment on how talented this artist was, or maybe currently is, but...
Did they get a gold star for drawing?
I think we're gonna defer to Josh on this. Not that this isn't great.
I think it's enough. Honestly, when you're talking to people, like especially, I've talked to directors and people like that, and not all of them are great illustrators, but they can do something as simple as the sketch you see here, and as long as it's effective enough to get across the idea, it's probably fine, especially for any type of design doc or just to get across the communication. So yeah, I think I'd give him a gold star for that. It at least gets the point across on that.
It's very generous of you.
All right. We have a question in here saying, what program are you using, Josh?
I'm using ZBrush. ZBrush is kind of the gold standard for digital sculpting packages right now. So digital sculpting is what I'm doing now, which is essentially doing a 3D model of, but I'm treating it rather than like how you used to do it, which is where you would drag vertices and polygons and kind of do individual things like that. This is able to affect multiple polygons at once with like a single brush stroke, and that makes it more like clay. So,
Do you have experience in clay modeling?
Actually, no, I don't. I did a little bit, in school, because it's always good to understand how that works. It's actually the easiest way to get, probably the easiest way to get introduced to digital sculpting is by do physical sculpting, because the thing, the skill itself, from a visual standpoint, is kind of the same. I'm not saying that anybody who can sculpt in digital can sculpt in clay or vice versa, but it's kind of the same, where you're evaluating shape. You're trying to move it around as much as possible to kind of make sure you're getting the shapes that you like. I'm always rotating. You'll see I'm always spinning. I'm always rotating. And that's because if I'm working on one side and maybe I start adjusting all these shapes and they look cool, not saying this looks cool, but let's say I do this and it looks cool, and then I rotate it and it just looks really awkward. That's kind of one of the things you most certainly don't want to do when you start sculpting. But so yeah, I don't have a ton, but I do have a little bit.
Here's a question from Juanfro. Why is the whale so blocky now? I think he's referencing that it appears low poly.
So the way that sculpting in the computer works is it's polygons. So each one of these squares that you see here is a polygon. Just real quick as I start to res up. I'm going to do this a couple times, so you guys are going to see this pop up. Just means I'm saving the file. Each one of these squares is a polygon. And if you've ever seen a game mesh or any of our meshes, this is one of the basically the ways that it's constructed is by taking vertices, which is these points here where you can see I kind of highlight, and then drawing lines from multiples together to create a polygon. And so what you do in sculpting is you start at a lower resolution. So this is the lowest resolution, and in just a couple minutes you'll see I'll subdivide, or I'll upres. Right here you'll see I'll subdivide, and you see it actually gives this more definition, and what that's actually doing is it's dividing each one of these polygons into 4. So you'll see now that is 4 polygons, and so I have more resolution to continue sculpting. So the reason that it's looking blocky right now is that I'm trying to get my base shapes. So you see I took the head and I'm kind of making it into this kind of spikier shape, and I want that to kind of reflect sort of like what a baleen whale would be, which it has more of a pointed head and nose. And we're just kind of run with that for a bit first. And I want to do that before I get into any of the size and shape of the scales or the, maybe the overall feeling of this thing, because I think it's important to get the big first read than it is to get the overall what a little thing looks like.
Just a heads up for you, we are at 1/3.
Cool.
To the show. So.
Well, that's quick.
Yeah. Goes by. What is this? We have a person over here. What are you doing over there? What are you doing over there?
Space whale?
Are you making space whale sounds?
Yeah, I'm helping out Josh.
Hey.
And bro, there be whales here.
Who is it?
That is
What do you
Sean.
mean,
That
who
is
is
Sean
it?
Tracy.
Do you have to? Oh.
What do you mean?
Sean Tracy is at the control board for the stream right now.
Uh-oh.
Well,
Okay,
I
so
saw
that means
Josh
we'll probably
doing
go
the
offline
space
soon.
Should we do an import of the human to check for
I already
scale?
did it. Look at this.
Oh.
Yeah, he did. We got the human
that out of the
import
way first.
We had
right up
to
front.
right away.
Oh my God, he's huge.
I made this one real
Well,
big.
Eric and I talked about this on our schedules.
That's true.
stream, and
Yeah.
and we did establish that we should go inside it, shouldn't we? And it definitely looks like you can enter that space well. And really, there's only 2 ways out, right?
Sure. We were actually talking about
So
that. What
far.
does this eat? And so, there's a lot of questions that kind of go along with that. So I'm just laying out some additional little fins here. One of the things I think could be interesting with this is, to be frank, if we just have one big shape, it's just going to look like a fish in space. And so the more kind of stuff we add to it, I think the more that will help, especially with a creature that would be maybe this big. You want to maybe start looking at how it could, propel itself, how it's going to do that kind of thing.
Oh, we lost JJ. Lost my camera.
The other thing is
No loss at all.
how is it going to know where stuff is? Like, how is it going to be able to sense where things are? If it can't see, maybe we want to look into, like, if we just duplicate and put something over here. Maybe we do one really, really long one of these.
Now, one of the things that is pretty identifiable with the tardigrade is legs. So instead of legs, you think maybe more fins?
Well, I think if it's going to fly, especially if it's going to be an atmosphere, right, it's going to have to fly. Either that means one of two things. It needs to be more buoyant, or it needs to be able to propel itself and fly. So I think the tardigrade is cool, but the tardigrade also lives mostly, I think, in water, which would mean that it would be able to propel itself through water with its legs. And it actually, like, sits on, algae and stuff like that. So I don't know if legs are really going to work for something like this.
Yeah, maybe the atmosphere is just real thick, right?
Yeah.
Sort of like, he's swimming through the atmosphere.
Was I here, Sean?
So cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm hanging out.
Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Jeez.
Hey, I'm over here in Texas. I can't see what's going on over there.
Yeah.
Trying to stay away from
Yeah.
Sean.
Give him a bell. That's good. That's good. He's been doing well.
He's been feeding.
He's been feeding.
So just kind of
Somebody asked why I look sad all the time. I don't look sad all the time. That's just my resting face, and I'm sad because I can't do this. I wish I was able to do this at this level, at this speed. So it's not sadness, you see, it's jealousy for Josh Herman.
I can teach you.
Yeah, Jared was showing me some tips and tricks before. Should have saved it so that everybody could have seen it. It was
He
looking
actually
pretty
did
good.
model a Klingon right before you showed up. It was great.
I thought it looked more like the one of the pig creatures from the old Twilight Zone episode, personally.
I see that, yeah.
What was that episode called? I can't remember it right now.
There's no way I'd know.
It's like Eye of the Beholder in something's eye or something like that. I don't remember.
Eye of the Beholder is a Twilight Zone episode.
Eye of the Beholder. Yeah, what was the episode where everybody was a pig person? The lady had reconstructive surgery and she ended up looking like a normal person, and she was disgusting because everybody in the world looked like pig people. Can't remember what the name of that episode was. No. Yeah, it was Eye of the Beholder. All right, cool. Thank you, Grackies. I didn't get much opportunity to exercise my Twilight Zone knowledge in this day and age.
So is this thing going to be aggressive or kind of neutral?
That's a good question.
Let's see if that's in the doc.
On our schedule, yeah, it was a
Oh, yeah,
it
let
was
me
a
pull that up
passive
too.
unless you messed with it.
Yeah.
Right? So
That's kind of how I would imagine it to be, right?
it's-
Oh, wow, they really fleshed this out. Okay.
Yeah, they went for it.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any personality traits in here.
Well, except for it says that its power level is over 9,000.
Oh.
It enjoys wrestling.
enjoys wrestling.
As
What?
we all do.
I think he made that one up.
I do like this part. If you show the document here, JJ. Yeah, we can confirm. Yes, it does say power level over 9,000. And specifically, the science is sound.
The science is sound. There you go.
So there was some argument about that on Reddit earlier this week. So
Do we have any community questions, maybe?
Piece of plant material. Can you share some of the high-level details of design doc? Let's see what the high-level details are. So its diet is mostly moss and other organisms.
now, that was the diet of a tardigrade.
And auroras.
Oh, you're right. I see here.
It's auroras and constellations.
No, they left
It'll
much
settle
of
for
it
a
up. They
buck
left
an
much of
ear,
it up to Josh. The design document gives a lot of suggestions and whatnot, which is pretty typical. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, artists got to art, you know.
Question that keeps popping up, Josh. Do you foresee this thing being able to devour somebody's ship?
I would love it to be able to. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it all depends on the size, right? Because we're gonna run. Let's play through that idea. If we say it can devour ships, now you're saying let's just play through the design, like just talk through it, right? You're saying that we need to be able to fit some ships inside of it, which we had talked about. Like I think Sean said they talked about, right?
That's right.
But then that means what size of ship? Is it every ship? Or is it just certain sizes of ships?
Well, I guess this is still smaller than a Bengal
Yeah.
or a javelin or a.
Sure.
So it's not about to eat a Bengal or a javelin. It should probably stay out of its shipping lanes.
But
too,
now that
'cause
comes
we've seen some
into
problems in Canada. for
like
this.
behaviors, right? Now we're saying, okay, we're going to have to add additional behaviors depending on what ships it's seeing. So if it's like a massive ship or even something that's maybe like I don't know, like a Polaris, this probably wouldn't be able to eat a Polaris, right?
No.
So what does it have to do with something? Does it run away from it? Or should it just be bigger at that point?
And and
And just be able to
considering
eat every ship?
that, maybe its diet, if its diet is more of like plankton or space plankton, then it would normally eat something like a ship.
Right.
Well, like a killer whale, it'd try to drown the ship, so it would just sit on top of it and bring you right down to the ground. That's
bring it
how
down.
it. Yep, exactly. It'll just flop right on top.
Here's actually a good one. Josh, how would the process change if you had to model the inside of it? For example, if it did eat you and you were stuck inside of it, well, would you have started this process in the same way?
I'll do it exactly like this. So I'd make a second one. So, right? So now I have 1 and 1. They're exactly the same. What I would do is I would probably just hold. So right now we're just going to make a quick mouth. Actually, we'll make more than mouth. We'll make like all the way to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to invert this.
Come.
I'm going to delete the hidden topology here. All right, so now that I can't show the rest of it, I'm going to diamond mesh
That's
this.
a neat trick. That's always a neat. Every time you show me that, I think that's.
I'm going to shrink this down. So now I know it's going in. Dynamesh that a couple more times. All right, so now when I look at the transparency of it, this is basically like the inside shell of this ship, of this creature.
Okay. That's awesome.
So now what I can do is I can actually start bringing this out. I can grab this. I'm going to pull this in, right? So now we're basically going to start creating a mouth or a belly, whatever you want to call it, whatever part we're going to make. I'm going to fill out some of this. This is basically just making a fillet. And then I would start pulling this. Let's say this is going to be the top of the mouth. And this is the bottom of the mouth. All right? So that's roughly where those things are going to start going.
That's very cool.
Going to dynamesh that again. So now somebody had talked about before, like it's getting really faceted. So what I want to do is I want to up that just for this part.
The subdivision thing?
28, yep. So it doesn't close off, and see that's created more resolution for me to work in. And then let's just quickly kind of block out some of this. So add a couple subdivisions here. We'll just re-dynamesh this at a higher level. In case there have been some questions about ZBrush, but Dynamesh is essentially wrapping this mesh in a new mesh at a higher level of subdivision. So now that I've got that, I can add some more subdivisions on top. And if I start sculpting inwards, you'll see this is that mouth that was there. So I would be able to kind of trace. I haven't gotten the perfect shape for what that inner mouth would be, but this is kind of when we make any human character, any even creature character, we would call that like a mouth sock. So this is basically where we start to see that inside. And so I would start sculpting the outside away till we saw that. Might even, right now it's getting really pixelated, so I'll grab all this stuff, just
Very
holding
cool.
down control to mask it.
Yeah, that was a good question. I got to see some cool stuff.
And then I'll suck that all inside. So essentially, when I remesh this, we see all of that. And then probably the next question that somebody's going to have, we already talked about this thing like not having teeth, right? It's going to have
That was literally
a
the next
screen
question.
or something like that. Is how are we going to make the teeth? Like, okay, now great, you've shown that part. We'll soften all this out. I would spend a little more time on that, but we don't need to for this. So let's say we start pulling some of this out. I'm going to make essentially what we did was, you know, when you go to the dentist and they put those things in your mouth and just like pulls your teeth back.
Right.
That's kind of what we just made right here. So we're going to have to fill out, and we're going to have to create whatever the lips of this thing would be, if it has lips, or whatever the flesh that's going to be around this is. So this kind of goes here. Smooth some of this out. Inflate it so it has a little bit of a thickness. Just kind of pull this in. And once we get those in, we can start doing the teeth. Now, we said that this thing would have a screen, so it's not. I'm not going to do what I would normally do for teeth. Typically, what I would normally do for teeth is I might do, there's some brushes here where you can insert things, like different spheres and stuff like that. You can insert all these other things here. So I can select cylinders and et cetera, et cetera. So if I was going to make teeth, I might start dragging these on and doing like individual shapes for teeth, and then I would adjust those individually. Maybe make one and then duplicate it around so it's a little easier. But for this guy, what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to make a screen. So I don't know. It would be curious. I think a baleen whale. It does. This thing actually looks like maybe a sperm whale or a baleen whale, where it has a screen. It looks like it's called the rostrum on the top. I don't know if those are on the top and the bottom. It might be.
Let's see.
More interesting. On the top
this
and
shows the
bottom.
rostrum only on the top.
So I'm just going to take this cube and make a.
Maybe do the rostrum
rostrum
on the top and like maybe a couple like little tentacles on the bottom to like grab things and push them in.
It's got like little
I'm just thinking about
prehensile
That's creepy.
arms.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about something to make it a little more sci-fi. You know, give it like 4 or 6 little
Yeah.
small tentacles along the bottom to just nab things and pull them into the rostrum.
That sounds terrifying.
That sounds creepy.
So we'll add this little cube here. Maybe give it a little angle just so we can start to do some of this.
Now I see you're using a pen and tablet. Is that the standard tool of the trade?
Yeah, pretty much everybody that sculpts uses a tablet. It's really difficult to sculpt with a mouse. I've done it before, and actually sometimes can be enjoyable. But most of the time, you know, you want to do with a pen and mouse, or sorry, excuse me, it's a tablet, because you have pressure. So I can do.
To simulate like you actually
Yeah.
a pen on a paper.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also, you know, lighter and softer strokes, so you have something that's going to be a little more. Like if I go here just real quick and I do this brush, gentle, I can kind of make a soft one, but without picking up my pen, I can push it down really hard and making something that's a little more difficult. Whereas a mouse is just a single, you know, kind of a binary operation. It's on or it's off.
Yeah.
And that will really make it hard to make stuff sometimes.
Folks are pointing out the thing I was describing actually has a name, cilium.
Oh.
Like just giant cilium along the bottom that grab things. Like anemones.
Don't even try.
An enemy.
Should be another great way to grab the smaller particles and stuff.
Josh, somebody asked, so this whale currently is made out of a lot of different meshes. There's the inside, the outside, the fins seem detached. How do you group it all together into one model that moves cohesively once it's game ready?
So that's actually a really good question. So the difference between a game mesh and a high poly mesh is completely different. So if you see in some of our sneak peeks or maybe our ATVs where we're talking about, whatever, the legacy medium, we just got into game modeling. That means that we've already finished the high poly phase and now we're in the game asset. The high poly is not really meant to be animated. It's meant to just be a digital sculpture. That's literally all it is. And a lot of the other work that would be spent on it is in the game asset. So anything, that from the texturing, that's mostly 90% to 100% done in the game asset. That inside is sticking out. And what we would do is when we're done with this, we would actually remesh or retopologize, depending what you want to call it, and create that game asset. So when it comes to actually maybe if I want to integrate the fin here and the body here, that's a different thing. I could sculpt those together. There's operations where I can merge them together. But generally, the game mesh and the high poly are completely different.
Gotcha.
Just heads up, we are at 12:40 now, Josh.
Cool. I think we're getting some fun shapes. I think the overall shape for this thing is kind of cool. I kind of like what I would probably start doing is I think the idea, something that the tardigrade has, and there's another picture of another bug on here, but a lot of those things that can survive space, they're super hardy, right? They have to be able to survive that, and that either means they have like incredibly thick skin, or they maybe they have a bunch of layers of skin, or maybe it's just like they have to have something that's going to allow for that. So I would want to make sure that we have, I think it's chitinous plating or some kind of carapace that would like really allow for that. We could make it soft and fleshy, but I think that wouldn't. It would maybe read more whale-like, but I think it also might not necessarily read as tough unless you got really close to it.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of a tough-looking whale.
Well, think about it. If he goes into an asteroid field, he's probably going to need to be tough.
Yeah.
You talked about the size of the eyes to help kind of give perspective on scale, right? So could you do the same thing with the skin? Could you make it really like rigid, right? Or cavernous to kind of simulate it's tough, even though it doesn't appear that way.
Yeah, I mean, you can sculpt anything. That's the advantage of being able to work in a package like ZBrush, where it's a digital sculpting package. You can sculpt, like I'm sure I know a lot of environment art is made in stuff like that. So if you're making rocks and trees and pillars and stuff like that, like that's all, even like a lot of architecture, that's all just sculpted. So we can make the skin appear in any kind of way that we would want it to be, which is kind of one of the best parts about it.
Now, what physical features, if any, from the tardigrade are we going to incorporate?
I think that for me, it's the science of the tardigrade. That's, I think, what we would mostly be looking at, because it's like the tardigrade is an example that something can live in space, right? So what is it like? What is it doing physiologically that's allowing it to do that? Because I know we talked about, we don't necessarily want it to have arms, because then it's definitely not going to read as a space whale. Maybe we could take some of these little things here and put like some little, like a bat might have, right? Like we might be able to put some like small little appendages, so if it gets close to something, it can like brush itself off, which could be cool. But we don't want it to like claw its way through space. So I think a lot of it is more just the science of saying, like, listen, this can happen. Like, this could be a real thing.
I have to say, with the amount of time we've used already, I know that this is going to make your day, Lando. I think we might need a Space Whale Part 2 at some point.
Are there any questions from the fans? Anybody here?
Yes. How can it live in space without oxygen? There's a lot of design questions, guys. So just as a reminder that Josh Herman is the character art director, and while design influences a lot of the art decisions, more art-centric questions are more likely to be answered.
It's true.
Yeah. One of the fun facts, like with tardigrades specifically, is that even though they generally exist in water, they can actually go without water. They can leave water atmospheres for, I think it was like 30 years.
Yeah, it's a really long
before they go back.
time.
So yeah, it's one of those things where, in Sherry's original design doc, if I remember correctly, this is a thing that originates in the atmosphere of a gas giant, but basically it can, for lack of a better term, hold its breath.
Yep.
And then leave the gas giant and go into space and hang around in space and do its things for a while before eventually having to return, to take another, inhale.
which is, what a whale does.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's actually pretty accurate in that way. So I'm just going to start blocking out some of this plating because I think general shapes are kind of fun. I might want to adjust these teeth and figure out. It's kind of looking like he's got like a visor on, but maybe how would that work? And so it's reads more as lips and stuff like that.
Yeah, for me
maybe
personally,
get some more of this stuff going on.
Yeah, I'm wanting to see a bit more of what makes it space. What makes it?
I might regret asking this question, but enough people are asking it. It might be too design centric, but Josh, how do you envision that this thing will actually maneuver around and move?
I think that's not too much of a design question. I think it's like,
all natural thrusters.
I think it would be. I think that's like the point of adding some of these. I think if you say the atmosphere is super thick, right, and then you say that it has flippers essentially to propel itself or a tail, it can propel itself through that just by natural body movement, I think.
Someone has suggested using bioluminescence to communicate.
That's a good idea. Yeah, it's a really good idea.
Just give it the full Close Encounters of the Third Kind communication package. Just lights and sounds. Sorry. It's the 40th anniversary. I just
one idea that I do like for this is, if they can't communicate, or sorry, if they can't see, how do they kind of feel around? How do they know what's close to them? We talked about sonar. But one thing that could help to make it feel maybe a little more space and even just kind of a little more different is I like the idea of having essentially a lot of little small tendrils that kind of are really long. And they basically are feelers. They're essentially whiskers, right? So they kind of sit out and, if they happen to glance something, they're just kind of floating out in space. But if they happen to glance something, it's like, oh, I caught something. Let me just kind of start heading over that direction.
Yeah.
So maybe if we start including some more of these, so I just made like one really big one here, but we could always duplicate these around. This is one of the reasons that digital work is great, right? I mean, this is where you can just duplicate something. Maybe we'll put it on top. I can shrink it down really small, but then maybe I can lengthen it so that it's, even though the width of it is smaller, like we have some of these things that are going to be super, maybe that's too far, but if there's these little tiny things that it's going to have kind of off of it that are kind of
just floats around and
just kind of floats around in space. It's not like really vital to its existence. It's not really super important to it. It's just it uses them to kind of find stuff around.
No, I dig it.
So it starts gaining features from catfish.
Yeah.
At that point.
So will it live in water on a planet, but go out into space to procreate? Okay, I don't even know why I read that one.
Yeah. No, basically, it's a thing that it's a thing that is born and gestates inside a gas giant. Its natural habitat are gas giants. It's like the old, if you ever watched the old Carl Sagan Cosmos system, and I'm sure quite a few people watching probably have. He used to hypothesize about creatures that could exist within the confines of a gas giant. That is the natural habitat of this thing. That's where it will live. That's where it will breed. That's where it will do all that stuff. We're just saying, in order to justify the space aspect of it, like whales do already and like tardigrades do. Basically, it can hold its breath and break the confines of a gas giant to travel small distances around a system. It obviously doesn't have quantum drive. It's not going to be a thing that can travel between systems or whatnot. But we're saying, like, if this, just using Crusader as the example that most people have as far as our game for a gas giant, this is something that could conceivably live within the the atmosphere of Crusader, but occasionally you might see it pop up out of Crusader, and maybe could visit Port Olisar.
Hey.
Like check out what's going on in Olisar before returning home.
starting space whale tours at Port Olisar.
Yep.
I gotta say, Josh, silhouette's looking really cool so far.
Thanks. So I'm just spending a little bit of time trying to focus on that. One of the things, when you start with a sphere, you start with something, you want to try to get a little bit of that in there. And I think as I'm working on this, like if I'm looking at the overall shape, I got a lot of stuff going on up here, but maybe it's a little too small. So I think what I would do is just pull some of this out.
Yes.
No, it does not have a docking collar. I can answer that one.
But it does have over 1,500 SCU.
Ooh.
And LTI. No, there was one good question I just saw. Where did it go? Oh, Josh. So we don't necessarily have to do it, but if you were hypothetically to make this whale translucent, what all goes into doing something like that?
Translucent is actually incredibly difficult.
Really?
The reason it's not necessarily on a art scale. It is, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it is graphical because essentially it gets really expensive. So because what you want to do when you're doing something that's translucent is you need to see the inside. Yep. So that means it's essentially like rendering glass, and glass is, everybody kind of knows in the tech world that glass is one of the more expensive shaders because you're seeing through something, right? And you're seeing through that thing to the next thing.
Right.
But you still have to render the glass as if you would anything else. And so that's where it gets a little difficult. So that's why translucency would basically mean, just like how you saw me sculpting the mouth, if that was its organs or its rib cage or anything like that, we would have to sculpt and make those just like you would any other part of this. Mm-hmm. And then you would also need to make sure that the skin was translucent, but that would have to render the whole object as well as the interior of the object. So it's easy from like saying, okay, you just make the inside and you make the outside. But it's not necessarily that easy when it comes to getting it in the game and running. Yeah. And then translucency is also different than transparency, because transparency is just basically turning down the opacity of something, whereas translucency is like you can see into it, but you can't see all the way into it. And that's essentially like adding a depth or a fog, right? So fog is another thing that's expensive because it creates a depth. So it's not hard, it's just expensive.
Mm-hmm. And that's the constant, never-ending battle in game development. Yeah. Is you take things and you make them look as amazing as possible, and then on their own, it works great. And then you integrate it into a game with 50 other things that look amazing, and you start having to look for places where you can, viz area if it's a level, if you LOD it, if it's a ship, wherever you can start knocking things down in order to make it all play together.
Yeah, and I think that's that's really what it's about. Is like, I get a lot of applications for jobs, and if you have great work, that's awesome. But like, you need to show me also that you can make game assets, because that's a key feature to being able to work on a game, is making sure you can make something that can run in the game. There's a lot of really talented people, but not everybody can make it work within the confines of a game.
That's actually a really good point, and it leads straight into what I believe is a really good question. How much do you, or how often do you have to think about rigging and animation while you're doing the sculpting?
A lot, actually, and we have a phase in our pipeline called tech approval. So if we're going to do a concept, or let's say this is a concept, so let's say when we were done with this, I would go over to Sean or Sean's team and say, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking, and what do you guys think? Where's the problems that you would see with this? What, or what special things do you think that we'll need for this? And typically what happens is, if they have their feedback, they come in and they say like, oh, this is, maybe these fins back here, you need to adjust. Like if we want this fin here to kind of be able to animate and do this, it's going to start clipping. So maybe we adjust some of the body here, or maybe we adjust some of the things here. You just run into a lot of little things like that, and it's nothing really major. It's just like, typically you'll have to just run it through the other teams and make sure it's cool. You do that all the time. We do that with animation. We do that with anybody if there's something new, especially, if we're simming clothes or we're animating certain different types of things or different types of creatures or, whatever. We run it through as many other departments as we can just to make sure it's going to work.
I just got to say, Star Citizen community, you guys have been vying for the space whale creation for so long. I think it's hilarious that you guys are so hyper-focused on natural thrusters. Come Come on.
You know, it's immersive, right? It's I think our game is about realism in a lot of ways. So realistically, how is it going to fly? How is it going to float?
Yeah, I suppose so.
And you know, Sean made a good point in the way I would just cap it off by saying, you know, thick atmosphere, they're buoyant. Maybe there's something in them that makes them, and then they can fly around. So
Could the feeling things be used as weapons?
like a tentacle.
Yeah, I suppose so. Could it use them to defend itself or attack you?
Yeah, maybe amid a charge, or
maybe you know, they could have a lot of different things. They could be kind of like an eel, like they could be electrified, like a jellyfish, something like that. You could do some things. Yeah, you could do a lot of a lot of that. You know, every time it's a little cliche, but every time you add something, you got to add another mechanic, right? And every time you add a mechanic, it gets more complicated, and every time it gets more complicated, it's more work. So we try to make things as cool with as much stuff as possible, but also hopefully not adding too many mechanics in. But yeah, we could do a million things with it.
Yeah, there's a couple of suggestions in the chat for like EMP stingers, basically some bioelectric thing that knocks all your ship systems offline.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. You feel like, do we need something on its side?
You want something like here?
Yeah, I feel like we have all this stuff on the top and the bottom, and the front is awesome and has many features. I feel like.
Well, somebody made a good point, and you know, natural thrusters and what have you. I mean, it is science and how it actually would maneuver. Someone was saying that it could consume natural gases into like giant pockets and bags, and use essentially natural thrusters to maneuver. Yeah. So there could be like some type of giant pockets or something on the side.
Yeah, basically, it could store up the gas in a gas giant, basically, and then when it breaks atmosphere, start poop gassing.
It's not.
Yeah, I think there's probably a better term, but yeah, essentially.
Sure.
Yep. You're watching poop gassing with Disco.
So we'll get some of this. The only thing with adding things to the side.
Yeah, it was a question, not a suggestion.
No, it's an interesting suggestion. The only problem is I'm worried about is, let's say we start. I mean, we could do something big, like something simple like that, which is probably okay. It just really starts to take away from the overall shapes of it. Meaning, like,
what about like you have that armored carapace on its head? What if we just gave it some armor on the sides?
You want some like little things that kind of do like this?
Maybe some armor on the sides.
So we'll do like let's start. What I like to do with this is like I've got the overall shape, and now we'll start.
Yeah, I don't want to mess up the silhouette at all.
No, yeah, I think it's an interesting idea to like say, okay, now with any bug or anything that has a carapace, right? It essentially needs breakpoints because they can't really be one solid piece of exoskeleton. So you start breaking that up into saying like, all right, where's all the places it's going to move? And if it's going to move a lot, it needs to have a lot of little sections. If it's going to move a little bit, it can have a couple small sections or a couple big sections. So I think when we get to the side, you'll probably see a lot of movement. You know, a whale moves. It moves like this, right? When it swims, it doesn't
just
swim.
like that.
It doesn't. I don't think they swim as much like a shark does. I don't think they swim like that because their tail's the opposite direction. So it might move more on this axis, meaning like this way, than it would on this side, if that makes sense. So it might be good to have more, like lots of little plates that would kind of be over in this region.
Yeah, that's
a lot of suggestions of solar sail fins, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, solar sails are nice. I mean, it's not kind of a good way to say like, you know, what is it using for energy, right? That's kind of what we talked about earlier. So,
sugar-free Red Bull.
Sugar-free Red Bull. There you go. Number one choice. It could solar energy or any kind of energy, you know, could definitely be what it could use.
Finally. Sorry, guys. Yes, solar sail fins. That is a great idea. Lando's beard. I don't know if it would fit.
Yeah, also, for the people that have been asking why I didn't shave, we went to Evo Coddy last night.
Oh.
3.0 is not out. When 3.0 is out, when everybody can play 3.0, that's when this comes off. That was the deal. That was the compact I made with you. So.
And it's not going to what it used to be. It's going completely shaven.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'll go
wow.
clean shaven. I haven't been clean shaven in about like a decade, so I don't actually know what my face looks like anymore. So there are only 3 things that can make Disco Lando shave at this point: 3.0 in everybody's hands. They somehow magically say, "Hey, we want to scan your head into the game for some reason," which isn't going to happen, or it gets caught in machinery.
Oh wow.
I don't think the scanning
went
thing is
dark
going to
real.
work because then they'd have to remodel all helmets in game to be bigger.
I'm not even mad because you're right about that. look at how big my melon noggin is. Look at this. This isn't like this is scaled properly. It's just impressive.
This is scaled properly. All right, so we're starting to just block out some shapes on it.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. I guess it was. Yeah, I just wanted some
Texture.
Yeah.
No, that looks really cool. I like it.
Yeah, we are at 1 o'clock, by the way, Josh. So
Okay.
it is just it's all in your time at this point.
Cool. I'm kind of just enjoying detailing this and kind of figuring out some shapes right now. So if we got a couple more questions or whatever you guys want to do, I'm cool with that for a couple minutes.
Yeah. Keep bringing the questions we're reading. Is this a joke or will there be space whales in game sometime?
We are exploring the idea. It is not a confirmed thing. The lore team asked us to play around with it. It's a thing that we have talked about for some time. Chris, if you look back at a Jump Point magazine from like a year ago, or maybe even a year and a half ago, there was an internal memo included in a Jump Point magazine where Chris said we're looking at the possibility of having space whales. It is something that we have discussed for a long time in the Star Citizen project, but I can't. We can't tell you definitively yet. It's not happening tomorrow if it happens. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, of course. It won't definitely.
Tell you what, though, their persistence paid off. I mean, here we are. After, the first couple of Happy Hour game devs, we said no to space whales, and
Well, I got
go to Orlando.
I got tag teamed. I had the community overwhelmingly vote for it, and I had the lore team go, "Oh yeah, let's do this." I'm like,
Well, the real problem was you came to me and you were like, "Can we do them?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?"
yeah. Basically, yeah, that's right. I got triple teamed. I got triple teamed on all sides. Absolutely none
Josh,
of
what are
you
your
had my
thoughts
back.
on blowholes being on the side of the whale?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, we could put them like a couple. Or, we could do some little small ones that are maybe something that's like over here.
Maybe
like
that's
will
how it
look like
uses
the
to
eye.
thrust or something.
Ooh, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
People are really digging the detail work you're doing right now,
Yeah.
saying that it looks a little tougher now. Like it
Yes.
maybe could
Yes.
resist some incoming rocks and stuff.
It could resist somebody in a retaliator coming by and torpedo bombing it
Yeah.
at least once.
I mean, let's just say hypothetically, as we know, we don't know if it's going to go in the game yet. It's all being explored. But, you got whale hunting.
Yep.
I'm down. That's all I'm going to say. I want a harpoon gun.
Get that meat. Sell it on the market.
So with the ship pipeline, there's obviously a step where they do damage states, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have that with character stuff at the moment.
We don't right now.
Yeah?
We do not right now. We do not have that.
So creating a creature like this, if this were to go in game, I imagine that would have to be something y'all would have to adapt, or what would that look like?
Yeah, that would be definitely. It would have to. You would need that, I think, in this. I think it's so big that you would have to.
We're just bringing the space wheel to life. You guys are already talking about killing it.
Of course.
Let the space wheel have a day where it doesn't have to worry about being hunted.
Poor guy.
I mean, don't turn me into a space whale advocate.
I know. All of a sudden, biggest. What is it? What is it you got against space whales?
Everybody else wants one.
Just counterculture.
I'm an advocate for the space whale. I think it's awesome.
No, I don't actually have anything against the space whales.
Good answer.
Ben wanted
They're
it,
gonna let
so
you
I
live
didn't.
now.
Ben wanted it, so I didn't. That's all.
All right, let's see. Looks like some of the questions are dying down a little bit.
Yeah, we're at the end. Josh is just playing. We are going to have to let him get back to his actual work.
All right.
Well, you know me, I'd keep you here forever, but then your producer's going to yell at me. You kept Josh Herman for how long? And I'm like, he's a director. He can take care of himself, and they still get mad at me.
Yeah.
They still get mad at me.
Ooh, Space Whale versus Sandworm the movie. I'll tell you what, if
Sci-Fi
this thing
channel.
makes it in games, someday one of you guys needs to make the machinima for that.
Oh, please. Yeah. I'm down. I'll watch.
As long as at the end there's in the credits there's a special thanks to Disco Lando
No, you can leave me out of it.
for always supporting
Do we think that's big enough?
the Space Whale.
Should we get a vote as to whether or not that's big enough, and then we can maybe be done? Or do you guys
Yeah.
want to?
I think that's, well, I mean, for the concept, it's big. All you're going to do is scale it up. It's going to look the same, right? It's going to be bigger.
Well, yeah, of course. but
Yeah, that's right. Or you're going to shrink the person. Probably more efficient
I'd
to
probably
shrink
shrink
the
the person. Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, they're all spamming bigger.
Yeah.
I think they just want it to be as big as you possibly can allow it.
Yes.
I want it to be able to eat ships. I think that'd be fun.
Yes. Can you imagine?
I mean, that may be
devouring
like a little bit of an
Starfarer?
internal rivalry of like the character team versus the ship team.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I can see the email right now.
I think it'd be fun. Just make more
Alright.
big aliens.
At least the
creatures.
Polaris.
At least the Polaris for sure.
All right. So you ready to wrap this up, Josh?
I think I'm good. Yep.
Okay. So everybody, that's it. Well, thank you for watching Happy Hour Game Dev, creating a space whale. I think we got a first. I think we got a good first draft here.
Yeah.
I will have to go back and explain some things to the lore team, because as somebody pointed out, the lore team was like, "Yes, this thing should be this big." so we did ignore a little bit from what the team told us. So we'll see how successful we are when I have to go back and face that music. Nope, Sherry's already saying he made the right call. All right. So they're on board with the difference. A couple housekeeping things. The monthly report for September 2017 will be out later today. It's a little flashback to the old monthly reports of yore. It's going to be all stuff you haven't seen in our studio reports and ATV, because we've had the studio reports replaced by Burndown. Don't forget, CitizenCon is fast approaching. CitizenCon is October 27th. I think we're going to have one more of these before CitizenCon. It'll just be a community show update, where we'll just sit here and answer questions and update. We have a panel at TwitchCon coming up.
Yeah.
2 panels at TwitchCon, actually, some of us. If you are traveling to TwitchCon, Tyler and I are on a panel Wednesday at...
Nope.
Friday. Wednesday's not the last day of the week. Friday at like 2 p.m. I think, and then the entire Star Citizen community engagement team and management team and Jeremiah Lee and Matt Sherman are having a Star Citizen panel on Sunday at 2 o'clock.
Cool.
Yep.
Yep, Sunday at 2 o'clock. So if you are going to be at the area at TwitchCon, you should be sure to look up those, which theaters they're in. They're like the Give Please Theater or something. I don't know what the theaters at TwitchCon. But that information is available online right now for you to check it out. I'm sure somebody will phone it and stream it or whatnot, like they did our DragonCon appearance, but it won't be an official broadcast or anything like that. Finally,
Yes, we'll have some swag. We'll have some lanyards and stuff if you find us.
Yep. Finally, I want to make one last announcement. Nobody else at this table knows this is coming.
Oh gosh.
Uh-oh.
This has nothing to do with the show. This has nothing to do with any of us, but I wanted to finally tell you. The Anvil Carrack is in production. The
Wow.
Anvil Carrack is being worked on. They are updating the white box interiors for it right now. So that doesn't mean we have anything to show you yet. We're not going to have anything to show you for a while yet. But the Anvil Carrack is now actively being worked on. So,
I think I'm more excited than anybody in
Holy
chat.
poop.
And also, screw you for not telling me earlier. I didn't know.
So I want to leave you on a high note. So for Happy Hour Game Dev, Josh Herman, our character art director. Thank you so much, Josh, for taking
Thank
your time
you.
to be here. Tyler Nolan, community manager out of our Los Angeles studio. Tyler Wicken, lead community manager out of the Austin, Texas studio. JJ on the keys. And, of course, community content manager Jared Huckabee. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Thanks.